Yeah, pretty excited about the Starship Launch 4. That was great. I think that was sort of like a 20% lucky outcome because both the booster had a soft landing and the ship had a soft landing in the ocean. So we got a lot of great data. And unless something comes up that we think is problematic, we'll try to bring the booster back and catch it with the giant Mechazilla arms. And we definitely want our rocket to reach Uranus. It's a stretch goal to reach Uranus, but definitely something we think we should aim for. Yeah, the tower is actually taller than Mechazilla from the movie. So giant Mechazilla arms will aspirationally catch this gigantic rocket. It's going to boost back. I mean, like, excitement is guaranteed. Success, not necessarily, but it won't be boring. So that's going to be an epic sight. Giant robot arms catch giant rocket. Starship is the largest flying object of any kind. It's 5,000 tons at liftoff. Body diameter is 9 meters or roughly 30 feet. And it's going to get taller with newer versions. So it's an insanely gigantic thing. When we first started figuring out the Starship design, it seemed utterly insane. And now it's gone from utterly insane to merely late. Next launch, Starship launch is probably in about a month. We have to we're going to replace the whole heat shield on the ship. So the new heat shield tile is about twice as strong as the ones that were on the last flight. So, and we want to put an ablative secondary structure, like basically ablative protection behind the tiles, so that if a tile cracks or comes loose, it doesn't cook the rocket. Pretty incredible that the rocket, that the ship made it all the way to the ocean, despite the right front flap getting cooked very hard. It was kind of like a skeleton hand, but I made it. But on the next flight, we want to not have the tiles fly off and have a skeleton flap. So the new tiles will, like I said, about twice as strong, or hopefully half as likely to crack or come off. And we're going to put a secondary ablative material below the tiles so that if a tile does crack or come off, it's got a good shot of returning. We ran 2 experiments with tiles on this flight, which people may have noticed because they saw why there's some missing tiles on this last flight. They were intentionally missing because we were testing the secondary heat shield material, which is like a silicone felt ablative. It's not good for reuse, but it's good for saving your butt if a tile cracks or falls off. Very tricky to put these tiles, have them work well, because the tiles are ceramics. They're like a coffee cup or a dinner plate. So you got a whole bunch of dinner plates stuck on the side of a rocket that is shaking like hell. And it's shrinking cryogenically with the propellant and then expanding under pressure. And then you've got the tiles expanding when they get hot. So there's a lot of expansion and contraction happening while trying to keep all these brittle tiles from cracking or falling off. It's a tricky problem. No one has ever actually succeeded in making a reusable orbital heat shield. The shuttle heat shield took, I think, 9 months, 1,000 people, massive amount of work between flights. So I wouldn't characterize that as reusable in a meaningful way. And we're aiming for full reusability. So the ship comes back, gets caught by the Mechazilla arms, and is then placed back on top of a booster for immediate reflight. That's the goal. I don't know why the plasma was purple. I always like pretty much every color. Now, we were burning things, so probably I don't think all those colors should be there we're not burning things, but it's still going to be quite the light show. And what you're seeing with the Starship coming back in is just exactly what the camera sees. So there's no post-production, there's no editing, nothing. That is the live stream from the camera. It's what you would see if you looked out the window. It does look awesome. So yeah, I'm pretty fired up, actually. I was really walking on clouds after the Starship launch. SpaceX team did an amazing job. And we're really doing things that have never been done before. So the key to making life multiplanetary and being a true spacefaring civilization is full and rapid reusability, so that you don't have to get a new rocket every time you want to fly somewhere. Now, we live on a planet where the gravity is high and we have a dense atmosphere. So it's if this was a video game, it would be set on extreme difficulty. So, like, it's extremely difficult, but not impossible. So I'm confident it will work. Just a question of how many attempts we we need to make it work and then make it work really well. And then for building a city on Mars, you need thousands of ships because you can only go to Mars every 26 months. So Earth and Mars are only, the planets basically align every 2 years. And you've got a short window of a couple months to launch from Earth. So you need thousands of ships if you're going to build a city. And then the ships can only come back, best case, every 2 years, but realistically, more like every 3 or 4. So in order to build a city on Mars, let's say if you're aiming for a million, whatever's, I'm not sure what the right number is for being self-sustaining, but I think it's maybe on the order of 1 million people and maybe 10 million tons of cargo to build up the infrastructure necessary to be self-sustaining. Critical threshold to pass, some people would call it like the Fermi filter after Enrico Fermi. The threshold is get Mars to the point where if the ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, that the Mars city does not die out. So you could have everything except for one little thing that you're missing. And then if those resupply ships stop coming, game over. So we need to get to the point where Mars can survive even if those ships stop coming, whether civilization ends with a bang or a whimper. That's the purpose of SpaceX, make life multiplanetary. To make life multiplanetary, the probable lifespan of civilization is dramatically greater. And we can go eventually from this solar system to other star systems and maybe discover any long dead alien civilizations. I think it'd be very exciting. How long till we get the first city on Mars? So we're trying to speed run Mars. Speed run making Mars self-sustaining. That's the goal. So can we make Mars self-sustaining while civilization has a high enough tech level to keep sending ships to Mars? That's what it comes down to. I think it can be done in 20 to 30 years. If you have an exponential increase in ships going, it's 20 years. But I tend to be optimistic about time, so maybe it's 30 years, hopefully not 40 years. And we'll do the moon too. So the moon will do the moon along the way. The moon's basically in the backyard compared to Mars. But Mars is obviously Mars is a real planet and has a lot more resources than the moon. And it's much more likely that if something were to happen to Earth, Mars is more likely to survive than a moon city because you can shoot a moon base from Earth. It's very hard to shoot a Mars base from Earth. So Mars is more likely to survive than the moon if there's some like global thermonuclear war. Like Stephen Hawking, his estimate when I talked to him many years ago was that there's like roughly a 1% chance of civilization ending in any given century. So, and it's wild to think that Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years. And this is the first time in 4.5 billion years that it has been possible to extend life beyond Earth. That window may be open for a long time or a short time, but I think we should assume to be safe that it will only be open for a short time. So we got to hustle. What do I think of 3D printing? So SpaceX, I think, has the most advanced 3D metal printing capabilities in the world. If there's someone more advanced, we just don't know who they are, but I'm pretty confident we've got the most advanced 3D metal printing. Many of the Raptor engine parts are 3D metal printed. Now, I don't recommend trying to print the whole rocket. That's you'd need a ridiculously gigantic printer for that. And metal printing consists of millions of metal dust and millions of laser welds. So I don't think it makes sense to try to print the primary structure. And even for the Raptor rocket parts, 3D metal printing is slow and expensive compared to casting or machining. So it's debatable, actually. We actually want to print fewer things, not more things. If you have a part that has complex geometry with a lot of internal flow circuits, that's something that's very difficult to cast, like a turbo pump housing. That's where printing is potentially the winner. But generally, I try to print the least amount of stuff possible. So yeah, for anyone that's just joining, this is a test of streaming and a test of Starlink. So this connection is over Starlink. So these are photons flying through space, then back to the ground, and then to you. And boring machines, yeah, we'll have boring machines on the moon and Mars. I mean, anything that can be underground, you want it to be underground because it's shielded from radiation. It's insulated from temperature changes, so there's going to be probably a lot of hobbit holes on Mars and the moon. Yeah, mosquitoes. We managed to actually tackle the mosquitoes parts of Starbase, but man, mosquitoes they're a difficult beast to battle. And yeah, you'll be able to play video games with Neuralink. You may have seen Nolan, who's the first Neuralink patient. After he got the Neuralink, he spent all night playing Civilization, which is awesome. That's exactly what I'd do. Power him. Yeah, Proofrock will make habitats. Yeah, and you can bring your dogs to Mars. What's the painting about? That is an old Apollo painting. Will probably be a lot of Optimus bots on Mars. You don't need to terraform Mars to make it self-sustaining. Over time, you could terraform Mars and make it be like Earth, but that'll take a while, even if you take the fast path. So I think the right move is to get the city on Mars to be self-sustaining as quickly as possible, so as to secure the long-term future of consciousness and life as we know it, and thereafter work on terraforming. With SpaceX flight to Mars, I think within 3 years, I think we'll launch the first Starship to Mars in less than 3 years. Things will really go exponential from there. So, send a few ships on the first Mars rendezvous, which is Earth and Mars align every 2 years. So send a few ships first time, maybe 3. Confirm that they can land well, and then crank it up from there. And then go to 20 or 30 ships in the second rendezvous, 100 on the third, and try to get to 1,000 ships going to Mars every rendezvous, so every 2 years, as quickly as possible. I've not played the Terraforming Mars board game, but it sounds like something that would appeal to me. And yeah, you can terraform Mars while people are there. Terraforming Mars mostly consists of warming it up, which you can do with solar reflectors in orbit or just a lot of thermonuclear explosions. And yeah, we'll send Starlink satellites to Mars too, so Mars will have great internet. Mars is anywhere from 4 to roughly 20 light minutes away. So you won't be able to do anything real time on Mars, but texting, emails, and whatnot will work. And you can synchronize the internet, the Earth internet on Mars. It'll just be with a 4 to 20 minute delay. We're still waiting for Starlink approval in Turkey, so I don't know what the timing on that is. But we're now at, I think, 100. Starlink is now approved in 100 countries in the world. Fish license. We do need a fish license. That's a great Monty Python sketch. I think you could terraform Mars. Depends on how adventurous you want to be for terraforming Mars. If you really want to go super fast, I don't know, maybe you could do it in less than 100 years. And not everyone needs to go to Mars. Obviously, there's figure out of the 8 billion people on Earth, maybe 1 million might want to go. Just so it's not going to be a luxury destination, not for a very long time. So, the sales pitch for Mars would be kind of like the apocryphal Shackleton ad, which is it's dangerous, cramped, uncomfortable, a tough life, some chance you'll die. Who's in? So, yeah, Mars will be tough sledding for a while. But like I said, important for ensuring long-term survival of consciousness. Say there's at least some number of people that are willing to go on a dangerous expedition in cramped conditions in a relatively tiny metal can. It'll be a fun adventure if you live. Yeah. I've been asked a number of times, do I want to die on Mars? I'm like, well, I do want, I'm going to die somewhere. Sure, why not die on Mars? I just don't want to die on impact. Well, we'll see. I think Megazilla's got a decent chance of catching the rocket. Probably, 50% chance. But the booster will come back. It'll have an impact point that's out to sea. So it'll have to steer itself towards the tower with the catch arms. And if the booster detects that anything's wrong, it'll suicide itself into the ocean. If things are looking good, it'll steer over to the tower and the arms should be able to grab it. And just like Falcon 9 landings, so it took quite a few attempts before it worked. I think it was like 14 attempts all in, depending on how you count it. And now it's, knock on wood, it's somewhat routine that the Falcon 9 booster lands. It'll be exciting to watch, excitement guaranteed. The tower I think that we'll be able to make the tower robust to, thousands of landings. And we do have interesting satellite program with UC Berkeley and Seoul Perlmutter, where Seoul wants to take a ground telescope, it's a lens for a ground telescope, and put that in space, which would be, that ground lens wouldn't be competitive on Earth. In space, it would be epic. So to be combining that lens with more advanced electronics, it probably is roughly 10. It would probably be roughly 10 times the resolution of Hubble. I have heard of dog with that. So yeah, the reason we want to put the next generation Starlink satellites lower is that if a satellite does die out, then if you're lower in the atmosphere, it'll deorbit and burn up fast, and the atmosphere ends up kind of like an orbital cleaner. And the lower you are, the faster it'll sort of clean up a dead satellite. Yeah, Flight 5 is hopefully about a month away. Flight 5 of Starship hopefully a month away. So the question is, how will Starship overcome fuel, boil-off, and thermal issues on deep space missions? Well, first of all, Starship actually is mostly oxygen. So its propellant is about 77% liquid oxygen, 23% liquid methane. And you only really need the header tanks to have propellant for landing. So you do Mars transit with the main tanks, and then the header tanks, which are well insulated, will be what's used to land on Mars. And how long before Florida gets to see a Starship launch? We were aiming to have Starship launch capability out of Florida around the middle of next year. So hopefully first launch before the end of next year. Earth to Mars Starship flight would be about 6 months. Eventually, you could probably get the trip down under 3 months. Mars is pretty far. So my guess is eventually it gets down to maybe a couple months. One of the questions was, did we consider other designs for Starship? Yeah. So Starship went through, I forget how many iterations before it got to its current form. There's a lot of ways to solve the problem of full and rapid reusability. Starship was going to be a carbon fiber, like the primary material was going to be carbon fiber, high-end carbon fiber, and the propellant was going to be hydrogen on the fuel side, always oxygen on the oxygen side. And hydrogen is just way too much of a pain in the ass. You can get about the same delta V with hydrogen stage as you can with a methane stage. So you can get high performance methane engine can get to an ISP up of around 380 seconds, but it's about the vehicle is about half the size hydrogen fueled vehicle. So when you get to very big rockets, the limitation is the volume of the rocket. Like, how big is it? What is the biggest thing you can move around? And for a given amount of volume, hydrogen is actually not efficient. A methane rocket is more efficient than hydrogen, and methane is cheap and easy, and hydrogen is expensive and difficult. So that's why I switched us from hydrogen to methane. And then we were using an advanced carbon fiber for the primary structure. We were not making progress. So we were having trouble even making a small cylinder section of the super expensive carbon fiber, which was about $120 a kilogram. It's like, well, at this rate, I'll be dead before this rocket is completed. So I switched us to steel. I thought it was like a pretty good bet because the original Atlas rocket was stainless steel. So I knew it couldn't be that bad. And unlike the aluminum, lithium, or carbon fiber, you can weld steel outdoors. It's very easy to join. And stainless steel has actually increases in strength at cryogenic temperatures. So you can get around a 50% strength increase, if not more. And when both the fuel and the oxidizer are cryogenic, so you get that advantage in both fuel and oxidizer. Unlike, say, in Falcon, where the fuel is rocket propellant grade kerosene. It's basically refined jet fuel, but it's more or less a room temperature fuel. So with kerosene or RP1, you will not get the cryogenic bonus, but with methane you will. And the high temperature capability of steel is much better than aluminum by a lot. And when you have a reusable rocket, you're coming in very hot. So you need something that can handle the heat. So with the steel structure, you actually don't need any heat shielding on the leeward side, and you need a much lighter heat shield on the windward or hot side. So it turned out that steel was not just the cheapest and fastest way, but it was also the lightest, somewhat counterintuitively the lightest material. So it doesn't sound like it should be the lightest, but all things considered, it is. And then the booster, the reusability of the booster is more or less a scaled up Falcon 9. Using grit fins and impulsive landing, with the big difference being that it gets caught by the tower instead of landing on a landing pad. Now, it'll probably take us a while to perfect catching a giant rocket out of the air with Mechazilla arms. But once that is solved, it will be much better than having landing legs. So, and then the ship's a sort of a strange thing because it sort of looks like an airplane in that it's got these flaps, but it's really just trying to brake the entire time. So when it's coming back in, airplanes are trying to maximize their lift and minimize their drag. But the ship portion of Starship is trying to maximize its drag. It's just trying to be a giant brake pad. So it's trying to slow down the entire, get from about 23 or so, or what it's coming back in from, about 23 to 27, let's say. Try to get subsonic and then just float down like someone pulling. Like the way to imagine how the ship portion handles itself is like a skydiver. So those flaps are like the arms and legs of a skydiver. And it's falling belly first and just moving its flaps like you'd move your arms and legs if you were falling. And then it lights the engines and turns around and goes vertical and lands, which we've already tested that portion of it. So we know that works. You can see the videos online if you're interested.
Man, rocket science and video games.
Yeah, exactly. Rocket science and video games. Pretty much. I think we'll be able to get Starship. A stretched version of Starship should be able to achieve a 200-ton payload to orbit with full reusability. A lot of work between here and there, but that's what you run the physics on it. 200 tons, fully reusable is possible. And then the booster comes back very fast, especially as we increase the thrust on the booster. The booster will come back and land in about 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes, depending on how much thrust. But at high thrust levels, probably 5 minutes from rocket liftoff to the booster coming back and landing. So very fast. The ship needs to go around the Earth, and you need the ground track to line up with your launch pad. So depending upon what orbital inclination you go for, it's anywhere from, ship will come back in anywhere from an hour and a half to half a day. Once it's in low Earth orbit, it circles the Earth every 90 minutes.
But this one is going to be a close one. That's pretty tacky.
Yeah, it really is.